Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. This episode is brought to you by Beneked Commercial Real Estate. There's more to building wealth in real estate than simply buying and holding. You need to have an entry and exit strategy. You need to know when to invest, have a plan to maximize return during the holding period, and have an exit strategy to sell and exchange the property into a bigger investment. This takes a set of highly qualified professionals to guide you from buying your first investment property to eventually upgrading to the 100-unit complex, providing wealth for you and your family. Brian Beneked and David Peel have over 35 years of combined experience specializing in helping families build wealth through real estate. They assist you in putting your investment on autopilot and will guide you along each exchange. Visit them at www.bcre.co. Again, that's www.bcre.co to give your future a jumpstart. The City of Oakland is an ever-changing real estate market, and few know it better than Steve Peterson. On this week's Highest and Best, we talked to Steve about the Oakland Market moving forward, as well as where to invest in real estate around the Bay Area, and whether or not the tech companies should take part in ending California's housing crisis. Steve, thanks for coming on to the podcast again.
Thank you, Marc. It's my pleasure.
It's second time, right?
Second time around, man. Thanks for having me back. It was the first time. I got a lot out of it, so I'm glad that we can sit back down and talk and put our minds together.
Yeah, so I think you and I are in very unique niche industry within the real estate industry. You do commercial sales, I do property management, and I think even though we have very small, I guess, industry groups, we impact a lot of people with our industry because commercial properties are everywhere. Yeah. And commercial properties are not just retail and office space, but we're talking about multifamily also. Yeah. And property management, I mean, there's rentals everywhere and people need housing, right?
Absolutely.
So I love it when you come onto the show because we really get into a lot of these different things that affect the Bay Area, the different communities, and you work out of Oakland. And so I do want to jump into the Oakland real estate market, what's happening, what you're seeing, different trends, maybe even different projects, because here on Highest and Best, it's what I think a lot of people really listen and look for is, well, what's coming up? What do I need to know?
Absolutely, man. And I think Oakland has been for the last few years, a real hot spot. And, I grew born and raised in Oakland, and I started in real estate in Oakland. And when I started in 03, 04, it wasn't popular like it is today. It's still kind of, people were scared of Oakland. People, there's not enough jobs in Oakland, so on and so forth. But when I got in real estate, I was in San Jose State, and I came to Oakland particularly to do business. What I recognized was, first of all, it was inexpensive relative to the Silicon Valley and San Francisco and everywhere else in the Bay Area. And then what I also realized is it's the central point of the Bay Area. So, people go through Oakland, companies, it's just a lot of transactions happening through Oakland, and people transitioning, driving, on planes, on trains, the BART. So it's a lot of, commerce going through Oakland. Now, in the last 5-10 years, with the economic growth that's happened, you've seen this explosion in Oakland. At the same time, you've seen, a lot of gentrification, a lot of, the kind of cultural dynamics of Oakland shift and change. So there's definitely good, there's definitely bad. And the market right now, I think, is real interesting. And, you got different markets, right? So I'm, a commercial broker, and primarily I do apartment buildings. Apartment buildings, January 2019, I wouldn't say we're slowing down. I would say we're more getting back to a regular market. The last couple of years, if you had a listing and you put it on the market, you get multiple offers. But I've seen last
even
quarter,
for apartment buildings.
Even for apartment buildings. It's been hot. And I'm talking about in some tough neighborhoods. You're getting 5 caps in Deep East Oakland. So that dynamic is beginning to shift. We saw that certainly last quarter. Part of that is the holidays. But certainly with rising interest rates, that investors are buying properties to make, to generate income. And so when their debt cost goes up, that's going to affect their yield, their rate of return. And so it's just going to slow down a little bit. However, people are doing a lot of 1031 exchanges, selling a property and needing to buy another property. So we still have a healthy amount of transactions, but I could tell for sure last quarter, we have a settling down, in apartments. Now, in other markets like in retail, office, and industrial is just crazy right now, man. I mean, with the cannabis industry doing what it's doing, but also not just cannabis. Industrial is affected a lot by the shift in retail, or I should say the shift in how we as a society buy goods and products. We're buying most of our stuff online these days.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we saw, look at what's happening to Sears and Kmart right now.
I mean, you see it, right?
And then Macy's, their stock dropped 20% last week.
I mean, I think I don't know that I don't follow them, but I heard like I think they took a loss, or their numbers were well below what they projected for the holiday season.
For Macy's?
Yeah, which is where they make all their money. But the bottom line is people go online and buy. So the warehousing element of that is also driving demand. The cannabis industry is also driving demand. So industrial is crazy. I would say retail is suffering, especially like the big box retail. But even some of the smaller retail spaces, it really has to be a lifestyle, like a really great restaurant or a great place to go hang out that is surviving right now, because retail's it's tough. In the residential end, and I see what's going on. I pay attention to what's going on. The high end has slowed, but you're still, like, I live in Sequoia Heights in Oakland Hills, and there's one that just sold for 1.3 on Elysian Fields, and it sold real quick. Whereas also, I've seen a lot of properties above $1 million sit, and I get a lot of emails for all the brokers and agents, right? I've never seen more price reduction emails for residential properties in the last 10 years. I mean, I haven't seen this many since the last downturn.
I've seen a lot of that too.
Yeah, I mean,
It becomes very hard to price those properties though from the very beginning, right?
It does, and I think we've had this, as brokers and agents, we've had this luxury over the last couple of years. If you just put it out there, even if it's a crazy price, you're either going to get it sold or you get interest. I think we're getting back to normalcy in the real estate market, and I started in 03, 04. A lot of people say it's so crazy expensive, and it is. But looking back to where it was, like at the height of the market in 05 and 06, we're kind of back to where that was in terms of pricing. So when I got into real estate, I was used to seeing these crazy prices. You know what I mean? And I think we're just getting back to that now. Although I think what's different, or what is absolutely different, is that there's a stronger economic base in the Bay Area, and particularly in Oakland, like never before. So there's a lot more jobs. There's a lot more people making more money, and it's still never enough. In the Bay, you making under 100,000. I think they, as a couple or a family, I think you're in poverty. That's, I think, what the numbers say, and I could definitely attest to that. Having 3 kids, you know what I mean? It's just expensive, but in terms of what's income that's coming in to households and individuals, is a lot higher than it was in 2005 and 6. So there is this anchor in the city of Oakland.
Yeah, that's one fact that I think a lot of people overlook. Many people look at, well, what are the salaries, the income people have been making since 1997? And if you look at that, it kind of shows that it's been somewhat flatline.
Yeah.
But if you look at household income and actual disposable income, then you start to realize that it's been going up every single year. And right now, average household income is about $110,000.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that also means a lot of people are moving in together.
Yeah.
And then that raises up the household income.
Absolutely.
But when you have the kind of crazy demand for housing we have here, people moving in together, now you have a lot more money in the Bay Area, and people are always looking to spend the money.
Well, you make a good point, man. And people collaborate. People move in together, families. People roommate. This whole idea of shared housing is, with younger folks, is definitely becoming very, very popular. And then, you also, you do what you got to do to make it, type of thing. You know what I mean? I know my mom is staying with me now, you know what I mean? Which is a great thing to have my moms with me. I love my moms. But I know it's a lot of people, I'm in my late 30s, or I'll be 37 next month. It's a lot of people kind of in my situation who've also have to take care of parents, or maybe have to move in with parents, or, move in with a cousin, or move. and you do what you got to do to make it work. The challenge I think is still just the availability. I think there's more people in particularly in Oakland, more people who want to live in Oakland, more people who are here who need to live in Oakland than there is available housing units. And that creates a problem. A big problem.
Now, in your opinion, what is it about Oakland that attracts people to it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, there's a lot of things. First of all, the centrality. I mean, if you live in Oakland and you work in San Francisco or the Silicon Valley, your commute is not. I mean, especially if you go from Oakland to San Francisco, it's easy. You hop on the BART. If you're going to San Jose, it's a little bit different. You can hop on the BART, but you got to get off and take a bus and all that stuff. But it's you can live for a fraction of the price than you could live in San Francisco or in Silicon Valley. So first and foremost, I think it's a factor of cost and then centrality. When people get here, what they find is this authenticity of the culture of Oakland. You know what I mean? People who grew up here, like myself, and a lot of people from the neighborhoods, are upset about all the people coming in. They feel that's driving up prices. They feel, okay, the flavor of Oakland is diluted. you know, and some of that's true, some of that's just people. When everybody gets crowded and compacted, is people are fussing about it, and but what Oakland has to offer that's unique from San Francisco or for Silicon Valley, it is very authentic, and I think anybody who comes to California, they from other states and other places, and they maybe been to LA or been to San Francisco, what they all say like to a person about Oakland is this is real, man. This is authentic. People, I mean, it's a real place. Yes, we got some crime. Yes, we got some issues. So does everywhere else, but it's an authentic area. People are genuine for the most part. You know what I mean? So I think that's what attracts people in, and also capital. Now we've seen this influx of institutional capital coming in Oakland like we've never seen that before. I worked on deals before where we were, trying to raise money from people, and people just would tell us we're not coming to Oakland. We're not. I had a deal I was working on one time a few years back. The lender was all gung ho. We engaged them. They were coming down to do their appraisal, and they sent us our money back and said, we ran the crime statistics, and the numbers the income and expense look great, but the crime statistics, we can't do this deal. You know what I mean? Now that's different. People are just chasing the return, and they could get that. So there's a couple of things that what make Oakland really unique is the culture, the authenticity of the people, the centrality, but probably mainly the cost, man.
Yeah, that whole world of raising capital and these big institutional investors is something that I've been listening to a few podcasts that specialize around capital and capital allocation. And it's, in fact, I'll give a shout out to the podcast I discovered that's phenomenal, Capital Allocators. And they basically interview a lot of chief investment officers from, and fund managers like all over the U.S. and basically figure out, well, how do you invest your money? Because a lot of these people are managing $1 billion, or some of their companies are handling trillions in investments. So where do you allocate all this money? Where do you invest?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because when it comes to small deals, they're not interested because it doesn't move money enough.
That's right.
And then they want big deals, but at what point is the money too big?
Yeah.
Because look at CalPERS.
Yep.
CalPERS $300 billion fund that they struggle in investing the money because it's too much money.
Right. And, it becomes a burden when it's that much. And it's hard to do deals because there's less deals in that space. And all those guys are competing, over a small amount of deals. And so I also think that's why Oakland has become popular because, these guys with the big money and the big funds, they got to place the money because they have a cost of that money. Like what you were just saying. And it becomes like, what do we do? And Oakland has always been what they call a secondary or tertiary market. It's not the primary market like San Francisco or Silicon Valley is primary. Oakland might be a primary market now, I don't know, to the experts, but it's always been a tertiary, secondary market. And a lot of the institutions, they don't like those markets. But I think we've seen in the last few years, a lot of them, and not just Oakland, but cities like Oakland, across the country attract this type of capital. But what you said is right. They got to do big deals. So that's a part of why we've seen so much big development going on in Oakland, is because when developers are out there getting their sites and then, raising their money, they got to go big or go home. And so they've been able to go big recently and get that dough coming in the door. And because people are now comfortable with Oakland, and there's pros and cons with that, but that's the reality, kind of what we're dealing with now.
So a lot of economists are talking about a possible recession in 2020.
Yeah.
How if this recession really came to fruition, how would that affect the multifamily apartment market?
Yeah, and at some point we're gonna have a recession. I don't know when. It's and nobody has a crystal ball, right? But you can look at indicators and all this stuff. I mean, we've had a major run up in value really since 2011. It's just been going up and up and up, right? So I see us leveling off right now for sure. Um, Same thing with the economy. We've been just rolling the last few years, and which has been great. At some point, that's gonna level off, and then go back into a decline. Um, that's just a part of business, a part of life, it's a part of real estate. People get too caught up in uh, it going up and going down. That's just part of the cycle. The key, I think, is making wise decisions. Now, particularly how it will affect multifamily. Well, what happens is when we hit a recession, companies lay off people. And now with all the technology, I think companies can even grow and make profits and still lay off people, which is kind of ruthless. But when a company sees that they can make more money utilizing some kind of technology versus paying somebody 80, 90, 100 G's a year, they're going to utilize that technology. I'm not an advocate for that. Just keeping it real, keeping it 1,000.
It's happening.
That's what they do, man. So when the recession comes, for sure, people going to get laid off. That's going to affect their ability to pay rent. You know what I mean? And our rents, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I could tell you like this. Working a deal in 2013, 2014 in Oakland, East Oakland, toughest part of East Oakland, 2-bedroom rents were about 1,100. That same neighborhood right now, Section 8 will pay you 2,000, 2,100 for a 2-bedroom, right? So the rent's almost doubled in like 4 years. You know what I'm saying? And they're able to, landlords are able to get that from Section 8. They're able to get that from market rate people going to jobs, working. When that sector gets hit, now all of a sudden people will have a hard time making those rents. So I think what we'll see is more vacancies. And what we'll see is, somebody's going to lose some properties because, everybody don't buy right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's always a way to weather the storm. And if you over leverage your property, if you buy it at the wrong time, if you don't manage your property, I'm sure you've dealt with as a property manager, you probably have a bunch of owners who don't know what the heck they doing and should be working with you, right? And your clients are. But there's a lot of people who don't know what the heck they doing and they won't go hire a property manager. So it really only takes one tenant to get evicted or for them to go through an eviction trying to evict one tenant to put them out of business. So I think we'll see higher vacancies. Rents will go down a little bit, but I don't think they're going to crash. I think rents will come down. And then we'll see some more foreclosures in multifamily. How much? I don't think we'll see what we saw before because that was, obviously historic and catastrophic. But we will be affected, And I think now's the time to have that discussion about what do you do when a rainy day comes, And a good thing to do is to store up your grain, so to speak, when things are good, so that when the rainy day does come, you're prepared for it versus just getting hit upside the head and say, "Oh, woe is me. What do I do?" You know what I mean? Don't know when the recession is coming, but it's coming.
Yeah, that's really good advice because a lot of people don't think ahead. They don't think, well, what happens when the economy turns? And then what happens when 2 or 3 of my tenants can't pay their rent?
That's right.
Now I'm not collecting, $3, $4, $5,000 per month, and now I have to evict. Well, if you're if your property's in an area of rent control and just cause, well, you're going to have a fun time with that eviction because that eviction is not going to cost you a standard $2,000, maybe $2,500 in most areas.
Right.
It's going to be costing you anywhere from $5,000 and I've seen evictions get up to 50, 60 grand.
You're right.
Assuming if you win.
If you win. Yeah. No, I mean that's the reality of it. And it's tough. It's tough being a landlord in Oakland and San Francisco and Berkeley. It's tough being a tenant in these areas. It's tough being brokers. But I think the key is understanding. You have to develop more wider base of your understanding of what you're dealing with. Whatever sector of the market you're playing ball in, you really gotta like step your knowledge base up. That's why it's good people listening to this podcast and other podcasts. Like you gotta soak this stuff up, man, and be prepared for the storm when it's coming. Versus, I remember in 2008, man, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was like October. I think I want to say 7th, but I could be wrong. But it was a day. It was a Monday in October when the stock market dropped like 777 points, whatever it was. I was in the middle of a deal, and like all I can remember is when that day happened, like everything stopped. All my deals either fell apart or the loans got stuck, and then it felt like the Friday before that we're rolling. The Monday when it came, it felt like okay, everything just jumped off a cliff. And I just remember being like saying in my mind, like, you know what? I just got blindsided. And I wish I would have known more. I felt like when it was 06, 07, like, man, it's too good to be true. But for me, I just kept on rolling. I think that would have been a great time to scale back or just to look at things and say, each move I make I need to consider what happens when a downturn comes versus, I mean, it was like swift lightning, man, when the commercial real estate market dropped in 08, and I just can remember saying, hey, these things happen, but I don't want to be caught off guard like this again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was a big thing.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us that went through the 2007-8 crash,
Yeah.
it really like hardened your skin. It really prepared you for anything going forward because now it's like, okay, you're constantly watching out for when could that happen again.
Yeah.
And if you kind of prepare for it, then the next time it's not going to be so bad.
No, I'll just do a quick. I had a client who saw it coming, and he sold everything in 07.
Wow.
And he wasn't like he is an expert economist. Now he's an expert landlord, but all he said was he was out in the market with millions buying buildings, and he kept getting overbid. And when he went, and in particular, there was a family like the Limby family in San Francisco, and they bought up all this stuff. They were using financing from like UBS or something like that. And he remembers saying, hey, these guys are getting financed at 90%. They're overbidding 10, 20% of the purchase price. He was just doing the mathematics. He's like, well, the numbers don't work. You know what I mean? They're negative cash flow day one. And he, at that point, decided to sell a bunch of buildings. And he sold pretty much all his buildings.
Smart. One thing you mentioned just a few minutes ago is many people don't buy right.
Yeah.
And with what you just said right now, it reminds me, I feel like right now at this point in time, January 2019, I feel like it's 2006, 2007. It feels the exact same way because I've seen some fourplexes that have sold for some ridiculous amounts of money, and they're in rent control areas, and the cash flow that it's coming in just doesn't match up.
Right.
It just doesn't add up. But they're buying at a certain value because the fourplex next door sold for that same amount.
Exactly.
But it's like, yeah, but they're also collecting double the rent.
Right.
And people don't understand that. And so why don't you break down for people that are looking to buy investment property, the number one thing they need to look at, or how do they figure out if a property is really a good deal?
Great question. And the number one thing you need to look at is the current and existing profit and loss statement. And that's going to show you what the rents are as well as the current rent roll, because that's going to tell you what the existing rents are today, what the existing expenses are today. And then you can base your analysis on that. And you want to look back at the last 2 years profit and loss, and you kind of make an analysis of what's been going on with the building, income and expense wise, and know exactly what you want to decipher is exactly what the net operating income of that building is. All the rents minus all the operating expenses, not your mortgage payment, just the cost of doing business. Because remember, if you pay cash for a building, you're still going to have property taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, repairs, pest control. All these things are just the cost. Even if you pay cash for a building, you're still going to have those expenses. So
something like property taxes is going to cost you a lot more than what they're paying right now.
Oh, absolutely. That's another thing. When people run their numbers, a lot of times when they're buying a building, they're going to look at the property taxes from the old owner. You got to keep in mind when you buy it, the property taxes 9 times out of 10 are going to go up. So you got to look at what are the property taxes going to be when you purchase it. And you go on your local county and go on their assessor's website and figure out, what the tax rate is and what you're going to pay, because it's going to be more than what the old owner is paying 9 times out of 10, unless they're losing money or the property's going down in value, which is right now not the case. So your expenses are going to go up. And the biggest problem, Mark, is people not looking at that. They're just looking at what the price per unit is, what the other, like you said, what the other building sold for, and just thinking, it's going to go up in value. And again, I'm seeing people being comfortable with negative cash flow. People with high income saying, hey, if the building's losing $500 a month, I can put that $500 a month in there. No big deal. I'm, it's like funding my 401k, which is, that's not the case, man, because you got a mortgage in there, and like we said, you miss 1 or 2 tenants. Now you go to evict somebody, you got to spend a lot of dough, and then you're not getting dough that same time. You can go from paying $500 a month to $5,000 a month real quick, and that'll put you out of business. And that's the thing we got to be as professionals, like, hammering down with our clients,
One of the biggest problems I see is that a lot of, mainly it's first-time investors, or they just own a couple properties here and there, and they're not used to buying a lot of properties. They use real estate agents that sell homes on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, can you make an offer for me on this property? Or what do you think about this property? Most real estate agents are going to look at a fourplex.
Yeah.
Oh, well, these fourplexes sold for this area. I think you're good with this price. There's a lot, obviously, there's a lot that comes down to real estate analysis to figure out, well, is this property really good investment or not?
Yeah.
And that's what's missing from, I think, a lot of the lower unit count purchases, because that's really your entry point for a lot of investors. And they will go use some agent that they know. And I think that's one of the biggest problems is that
it is.
Many agents just don't have the education and knowledge to really figure out the full analysis of it.
Well, and here's the problem, like what you hit the nail on the head, and not to knock these agents, but the reality is if you're not gamed up on how to analyze property, you're actually doing your client a disservice. So it's why a big part of that NorCal CCIM, which I'm a immediate past president of, we put on these classes every year, teaching people how to analyze investments. They're not cheap, but they're totally worth it. If you're serious as an agent, if you're a residential agent and you sell houses, eventually somebody's going to ask you, hey, you sold my house. Can you help me buy a fourplex? I'm selling this property. Can you sell this fourplex for me? Now you've gone into the investment, you've entered into the investment world. So that requires a different set of knowledge. Just like if you're going to sell high-end homes versus you selling REO properties, it's a different, it's just a different process, right? So you got to learn that process. Same thing with investment property. You got to learn that process. And so what happens is people don't learn that process. They're advising their clients. Their clients don't know. They don't know. And so they're just buying based on what they do know, price per unit, so on and so forth. When they get into the rental laws, they get into the income and expense, it's over their head. So like the advice is, for the brokers and agents in that space, there's a lot of education available to you, and especially you want to check out NorCal CCIM, you want to get on there, you want to get educated. I know there's this Commercial Brokers Association that's part of Bay East Association of Realtors, all kind of different courses. I'm sure there's a million podcasts. You got to soak up the knowledge of how to invest or how to analyze investment properties so that you can properly advise your client of that. Because whether you realize it or not, you are operating as a fiduciary to that client. You're responsible for them financially to an extent. So if you got to be able to advise them properly, and if you're not, now you're doing a disservice to them. You're better off referring it out. Now as for the owners of properties making these decisions, you should work with somebody who's already has previous experience in investment real estate, because you're dealing with a serious situation. And if you have a very great relationship with somebody that you want to work with because of your relationship, then you need to advise them to go ahead and get educated before you make this move, so that when you make these moves, you're doing it based on numbers and formulas and not just what the other property sold for.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of CCIM and a lot of the education that you guys provide, just from I mean, taxes, real estate
Yeah.
analysis, and just everything involved when it comes to commercial real estate
Yeah.
and multi-unit buildings. So the classes that you reference, anyone can go take them. They just
Yeah.
have to pay.
Yeah, and there's different ones. Like we have a fundamental foundations course coming up in San Jose in February. That's the intro course. That's the real basic course, like a 2-day course. Anybody can take them. That course I think is like $500 or $600. The core course, CI 101, that's the serious investment analysis course. That course is like $1,400. $1,500. There's some discounts available, like cultural diversity. Anybody who's a minority can take the can take the class at a discount. So I'm just saying that because the class that I talk to people about it, they're excited and they see the price and but it's an investment. You know what I mean?
It's also 5 days, isn't it?
It's also 5 days and it's intense. You're going through a book that's literally a master's level college course and you're covering that in 4 days and you take a test. So you go through that, you're gonna come out of there knowing some stuff. You know what I mean? And you will know enough to conduct the investment transaction start to finish for sure, confidently, where you're actually giving wise advice to your client. And that's something that I mean, that's why I'm so involved in CCIM because the education made a huge difference in my life. So I'm trying to get that word out to folks because there's a lot of residential agents who have the opportunity to stand out from the crowd by getting that commercial investment knowledge, and now they offer more to their clients. But also for the commercial practitioner, you should be fighting to be the best of the best, and that helps you to get there. And that's what this podcast, that's what we're doing, man. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, a real estate agent friend of mine, he typically sells properties, but he also invests his own money
Yeah.
into buying buildings, developing, flipping. And he's like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about real estate analysis
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he says, I'm doing all these investments, but I haven't really dove into the actual numbers on any of these. And I want to know if I'm actually doing a good job or
Yeah.
if I could do better. Right.
Right. It's a good question.
And so I said, go check out CCIM. And then he also talked to David Pio.
Yeah.
I put him in touch. And then he went to go do the 5-day class.
All right.
So he spent the $1,500. He went out there. He did the classes.
Yeah.
He sends me a text on day 2. He's like, man, these classes are kicking my ass.
Yeah, serious.
But at the end of the week, he's like, these classes just opened up my mind to a whole new world of real estate.
That's right.
He's like, there's so much I don't know, and there's so much I learned in these classes.
And so it becomes worth the investment, because especially a guy like that, he's already got investment. So he's trying to figure out, hey, man, am I making good moves or not? Because, without knowing the financial analysis, how to break down properties and then what those returns actually mean to you, that you don't know if the deal is good or bad. You only going off what the market is telling you. But when you have that knowledge, what he was saying is that whole world opens up to you, man. And that's, and one thing we talk about in the Bay Area is how competitive it is. And pretty much everything and any industry you could think about is competitive. We got a small area of land and a whole lot of very smart, educated people with money. So it's competitive, man. And you got to do something to set yourself, aside or set yourself to make yourself stand out, man. Because there's a million agents and a million brokers and people who got experience. So you got to do something to step it up. That's what I'm saying.
And speaking of competition too, for investing in property, you're competing with a lot of different investors.
Yeah,
You're competing with institutional investors. You're competing with foreign
Yeah,
investors.
yeah.
There's several companies, and even my business partner specializes in clients from China that are moving money to the U.S. to specifically buy real estate.
Yep.
And there's a lot of money there, and there's a lot of real estate being bought, but they run into the same problems. What are we going to buy next?
Yeah.
What can we buy?
And that's the probably has been the main challenge over the last few years.
Now, one thing I've heard many times, and correct me if I'm wrong, most multifamily buildings are sold off market.
And I would say a lot of them are. I don't know if it's most or not, but probably most of them are. What happens in the brokerage world is we're always pounding the pavement working deals. Commercial brokers still cold call. I know that's like an old school thing, but we do. And so a lot of times owners, they don't want to go through the hassle of selling their building like on the market, but everybody's open. at the right price generally. You know what I mean? Some people it's a family property or they love the building, they ain't selling. But probably 90% of investors, they'll sell at the right price. They may not go and list it and put it on the market. And so what happens is buyers, they want to buy something that's off the market. So even if it's the same property as something on LoopNet or CoStar, they want to know that they bought it and Alibaba and the 40 Thieves didn't see it or didn't know about it. You know what I'm saying? So what happens is now brokers are working with these guys. They're pounding the pavement and they're making deals happen. They're networking, which is we all network in one way or another. And that's probably how most deals go. I don't know if it's most, but it's certainly a significant amount of deals. And I look at my pipeline of closings the last couple of years. Yeah, it's probably been over half of them is deals that never touched MLS, or LoopNet, because I had the buyer and I found the seller. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the brokerage craft, how we've all been taught how to come up and hunt deals. And that's how buyers, how they hunt deals. So it's very different from residential in aspects. Residential, still a bunch of stuff happens off market, but not at the rate it does, in the multifamily world for sure.
Yeah. So if someone is looking to buy an investment property, they probably should be aggressive too and cold call every commercial broker.
Yeah.
Because that commercial broker could have several properties off market.
All the top brokers and even guys who aren't top brokers, they all got something, whether it's an actual pocket listing or it's an owner that they've been working on who says, all right, I'm not listening, but bring me an offer, right? A lot of people say that. So if you're a buyer, you may want to reach out to a bunch of brokers and say, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for. Obviously, whatever's on the market, I can see. So if you get something that's not off market, just give me a call and we can move on it quickly. And so that's what brokers love to hear. And obviously they're out pounding the pavement looking for deals, because if they find that deal and they have that buyer, then they can get both sides, which is what most people are looking for. You got to be careful in terms of liability, but that's the golden goose that everybody wants. And as an investor, you got to be shaking the trees too to find your deals. You can't just go to LoopNet. You can, but you're not going to get the best, investment possible. You got to put some work into it too.
So, in your opinion, if investing outside of the Bay Area and outside of Oakland, where do you think people should really look at?
That's a good question. I'm going to do my next seminar on out of area investing, because
When's the seminar?
It's going to be on the 31st, 31st in the evening. I just leased out my office, so I'm looking for a new location right now. So I'm kind of up against the wall, but I got a bunch of people who want to come hear some information, and I got this topic to talk about, because when I first got into real estate in 2003, 2004, investing out of state was the norm. A lot of people in California invested in Texas and other areas. Recently, in the last few years, I haven't seen so much of that, because you've been able to buy in the Bay Area and actually make an income on properties. Not so much right now, unless you're coming in all cash or 50% down. So what's happening, I'm starting to see the trend again of people maybe selling a property here and then going out of state and or out of the area and investing. I like, right now I'm looking at Stockton myself. Stockton's got some pros and cons for sure, but what they have is a revitalizing downtown that has begun. It's not revitalized. It looks like downtown Oakland, like 2003 or 2004, like a ghost town type of thing. But the plans, the city's putting money into that area. Amazon just came in. I think they got a distribution hub they're setting up outside in the French Camp area. It's going to bring, I think, 3,000 jobs. And then I've closed a couple deals in Stockton, and like 80% of the tenants are from the Bay Area, which is crazy. They drive to the Bay Area, but they live in Stockton at a third of what they could pay for in Oakland. So Stockton's another market that I think is hot. Out of the state, I'm working on some deals in Houston right now. I got 2 deals rolling in Houston, Texas. And I think Houston's a big old city, so you have to be careful of what submarket you're in, because it's so big and vast. But what I like about Houston is that the rents are good. In most places, like in Texas or in the Midwest or in the South, the properties are cheap, but the rents suck. You're getting $400, $500 for a two bedroom. You know what I mean? And in Houston, in like a B or C neighborhood, you're getting $700, $800 or $1,000 for a 2-bedroom, but you're paying 70, 80,000 per unit. So the rents in relationship to the price per unit are sweet out there. You're seeing 8 cap rates kind of all day long, and it's a major market. You know what I mean? So I like Houston. There's other markets in Texas that other people like San Antonio, Austin. People like Austin, but Austin's almost priced people out. And I do think there's a place for people who are saying, hey, look, I got a fourplex in Oakland or San Francisco. This is crazy. If I sell right now, I could take my profits and roll them out to Houston or Stockton or wherever, Vegas, and triple my income. That's a reality right now.
I just met with a client last night that wants to sell their property in Richmond, a fourplex in Richmond, and then take that cash to Colorado.
Well, it makes sense because you could put whatever they're making on that fourplex, they take it to Colorado, they're probably going to make way more with that same equity going out to Colorado or wherever they're going, right? So, they're gonna do better income wise. You take your appreciation growth that you got out here, roll it out of state somewhere. You're gonna, what the challenge is though. It's all the management. So that's where if you're gonna go out of state, you got to find a good property manager, and that is not easy to do.
I think what a lot of people should consider is hire an asset manager to manage the property manager.
Yep.
Otherwise, you have to be the asset manager to be on top of that manager. And if that manager is not good and you're just kind of expecting them to do their job, I mean, that's one thing that's surprised me about the management industry is how many rent increases are missed, how many 3-day notices are not posted on time, how just a lot of stuff is just dropped, right? The ball is dropped on a lot of things, or even managers that have become so friendly with the tenants that they're afraid to even talk to them about certain things that might appear as negative.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
So even hiring an asset manager to simply manage those property managers is crucial, and then you're essentially hands off and just collect a check.
Well, and that's the goal, man. Of I would say most of us in the real estate investment world, we're looking for that passive income. So we're looking for that passive income, and you just mapped out a model. You get an asset manager to hire the manager. Now you're really getting passive income if you can make that work. And I think that's just like with running a company, man. You say you're running a company and you're trying to find good managers for your company or a CEO to run your company. You got to get some good people in there because you can't do everything. But you certainly don't want to just hand the keys to the vault to somebody who don't know what they're doing. And for whatever reason, like what you just said about property management, for whatever reason, a lot of property managers don't do what you just said. They don't serve 3-day notices on time. They're not, as aggressive on the tenants, or maybe they're too aggressive on the tenants and they got all kind of problems. But it's very difficult to find that balance, although there's always somebody out there. You know what I mean? And I think you just gave a good model of saying, hey, if you're going to do that, get an asset manager, somebody to manage that manager so that when you're communicating with that person, you really you getting down to brass tacks. You're not into the weeds of the deal, so to speak, which can be laborious, man, especially if you have a job or a full-time business you're running. You want that property to really be a passive, investment, especially if you're out of state, but one that is being well taken care of. Because when I went out of state back in the days, I was doing deals in Texas and Ohio and Colorado, one in Florida. When they see you coming from California, they think you Mr. and Mrs. Moneybags. They think you the golden ticket. They think you got all this money. You from California. You got all this money, right? And so they're expecting, oh, hey, so, there's a toilet that goes bad. Or we just, call the people. They got to put up all the money, thinking that you're just having unlimited flow of money and not thinking, hey, the property needs to be sustainable. So that's one thing I think that people going out of state need to be mindful of is letting people know that they're not just the war chest of dough. The property needs to stand on its own feet. Obviously, if there's a capital call or something and you got to fund your own property, you also got to think about that too. But you don't want to make that the practice, of me coming out of the pocket. The whole reason you're doing that deal is for that deal to pay you every month, which is, if you get the asset manager and the management in place and you buy it right, that's the reality that we're all looking for,
So going back to Oakland, before we finish off this podcast, are there any development projects that people should be aware of that are exciting, fresh, that would interest people?
Well, there's a lot of development projects going on in Oakland right now. I got in my neighborhood, it's the old Navy Hospital in Sequoia Heights. So they're gonna, they've been working on that for years, and I just think that they've literally just start breaking ground on. But they're gonna have a commercial strip center, and then they're gonna build houses and condos and so forth. So that's one to pay attention. That's in the Oakland Hills, though. Then you have, I mean, there's a series of developments going on in the flatlands and downtown. I think what everybody's got their eye on is the A's ballpark. You know what I mean? Which where they're trying to do it, I think makes the most sense in terms of a ballpark. I think the challenge would be just transportation, back and forth because it's not right off the BART. But they can deal with that via like shuttles and stuff like that. And it's interesting, this whole A's ballpark thing.
Well, something to consider with the A's ballpark. I don't mean to interject, but
Yeah.
the the walks from 12th Street Station or God, 6 this microphone. The walks from 12th Street Station or West Oakland are shorter than the walks that Giants fans have to take from Embarcadero BART station down to their ballpark.
See, that's a good point.
So,
yeah, that's a good
Oh,
point.
really?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
And
well, what do you think? Also, another thing. What do you think of the gondola idea?
you know what, man? I think I think that's actually something because you got to be unique, right? We talked about standing out. I think that's pretty fat because that's something that people like the water and people want to experience the water. And so I think the one thing the city of Oakland we haven't done as a city is we have a beautiful waterfront, man. We just haven't made it available to people recreationally. We haven't made it available for development until now. The Brooklyn Basin development's going on right now. We just haven't done nothing much with our waterfront outside of Jack London Square. So I think where they're going to put it is probably a great place. You pointed out a good thing, Sam, saying, hey, look, it's actually shorter than Giants fan. And now
Giants fan walked out all the time.
yeah, and that's
Well, then you figure when Chase Center opens up, that's going to be even a longer walk if you're taking BART. So
well, I just was gonna say that, and my heart just drops about this dang Chase Center. I'm a Warriors fan. I've been a Warriors fan since I was born. I was 1982, but I went to Tim Hardaway camp in '91, so I've been rocking with the Warriors a long time. It's gonna be sad to see them move from Oracle, but it's even gonna be more sad when the Raiders move. And I think that's the one that hits you in the gut because not only are the Raiders leaving, but they leaving behind some pretty hefty debts to the city of Oakland. And there's a bond measure. I don't know all the details of that, but I know when they built Mount Davis, the suites, the taxpayer, we all pay for it. And when they leave, we're still going to be stuck with that debt. That's the one that hurts. And I feel like it seems like, and I don't know, but it seems like the mayor and the Raiders, I give them both blame. City of Oakland, not just the mayor, but the city of Oakland and the Raiders could have did a much better. They could have did what the A's are doing and find a private investor to put up the majority of capital. I think the thing that's going to help the A's stadium be successful is that they found a private investor, put up the dough. And we live in this area where you have all this venture capital, all these tech firms, all this real estate wealth, all this private wealth that's immense. The Raiders could have did the same thing. The Raiders was looking for a free lunch, and the city of Oakland was not trying to put up any dough, right? But they didn't want to work together, which was the problem. They could have easily came together and did a joint venture and went to Facebook or Google or Oracle or somebody and raised the private money. So I think the A's will be successful. And then the plans for the site, the Coliseum site, is I know there's talking about bringing some tech companies over there and doing some housing. This was kind of my fear. So I grew up in this neighborhood behind the Coliseum, Brookfield Village. And I was really when they were trying to do the Coliseum City idea, right, with the Raiders, I was really rooting for that because I thought that would be great for the area because there are going to be a lot of retail. And within that, retail is going to bring jobs for, lower to moderate income people, which is most of the people who live in that area. So I'm thinking, okay, which a lot of people work at the Coliseum to this day who live in the area. But, you build a new stadium, then there's all this retail over there. Now people who live in this area are going to have somewhere to go to work where they can walk to work or they can bike or catch the bus to work. You know what I mean? Where this is some jobs that are going to help out. So I thought that was going to be great. And then when it all fell apart and then when the Raiders, we let the Raiders go, I was saying, they're going to take this site. It's going to be developed. It's a prime site. So it's not going to sit vacant for years. It's going to be developed, So the only thing I have about tech is, I mean, obviously there's a huge need for tech. I mean, that's the reality of it. Just that's not going to employ a lot of the people in the surrounding areas. You know, housing, you build housing anywhere in the Bay Area, it's going to get filled, right? But I just wish that that site could have been. I wish they could have cut a deal, the Raiders and maybe the A's, and partnered and did this Coliseum City, because I think that we would be able to keep a lot of the people who live in that area employed by that area. Now with what they're proposing, there'll be a lot more people coming to the area, but people from outside going to work, because it's a central. That Oracle Arena is probably like in the Coliseum. It's probably like the central point. You have to put a point of the middle of the Bay Area. That's probably it. And it's a perfect venue for sports, because you get in and you get out. You got the BART right there. You got the freeway, airport. So it is what it is. I think if you're going to build a baseball stadium, you should be trying to build it somewhere on the water. So I think that makes sense. I didn't realize but the thing I've been saying is, oh man, how are people going to get there? You just made a good point about, hey, they get there at Pac Bell Park or AT&T Park, and they walk longer. So they'll walk there. They'll get there. I think it makes sense. I think it's gonna. They're using private equity was the key, and sure they're gonna have some problems, but we can't lose a third sports team in Oakland, man. I mean, when the Raiders officially get out of here, which I don't know if it's next year, who knows, right? I heard they were gonna try to play at AT&T or play at UNLV, whatever, right? Until their stadium's built, it's gonna hurt, man. If you're a Raiders fan, that's gonna hurt. You know?
I saw the stadium in Vegas just a few months ago.
Yeah, it's coming together.
It is.
It's coming. I think
last I heard, though, the Raiders are again in talks with Oakland to play one more year in the Coliseum. So,
well, I mean, it makes sense because come on, you see them playing at UNLV, man. I mean, I don't know if you've seen that stadium, man, but it's high school. I think De La Salle Stadium looks better than that one right now. Real talk.
Mean, it definitely makes more sense than making them play in San Diego or AT&T/Oracle Park.
Yeah,
the San Diego idea I thought was the stupidest of all of them.
That don't make no sense, man. And that's like a slap in the face to San Diego people too. It's like y'all team left, so let me bring the Raiders, because every time the Raiders used to go down there, it would be more Raider fan than Chargers fans. So now you're gonna bring the Raiders in and all the Raiders fans. They got to work out another deal with them there. But when they leave as a city, we're gonna feel it, and that's when we're gonna say, well, we cannot lose the A's. I just hope that with the Coliseum site, we find a way to employ and house people from East Oakland. Let's just not say, let's bring all this economic development and forget about these guys. Let's house them and let's employ them with whatever goes down there. And hopefully the city is mindful of that. Because I think the one thing about the Coliseum, and anytime you do a development, and I think anywhere in California, there's going to be somebody against you. That's just part of it. So you have to have the ability to go and get people on your side. So I don't know if these guys, if they're doing the right moves on that or not. But what would be wise if they want to get their stadium built is say, okay, what we're going to do over here in East Oakland is we're going to do something that involves us employing folks and housing folks from East Oakland. And if they can do that, that'll help them get what they want on the water and to get the A's what they need in the new stadium. And we keep that economic base here in Oakland, and we house people and we employ people. I'm hoping for that, man. We'll see how it all falls out. But we can't lose a third sports team. That's you cannot lose 3 sports teams in an era and think that that's not going to have an impact on your city, because it will, you know.
Well, with that said, we're going to end the podcast there. So if someone wants to work with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, hit me up on the website, man, www.infinityinvestments.net. That's, right now that's the best way to work with me. I would say, website is better than the phone. I get blitzed with a lot of phone calls, you know what I mean? I'm trying to go technological. I've grown up here my whole life, but I'm probably the least tech-savvy person in the Bay Area, most likely. So I'm looking to do most of my stuff in terms of communication with folks online, and we got a website with some information about our properties, information about upcoming events. So hit that up, www.infinityinvestments.net.
That is one thing that you and I get bombarded with, not just phone calls, but emails every single day. Man. But I tell people, you want my attention?
Yeah.
All caps, subject line, I'm a buyer.
There you go. Then you got my attention.
Yeah.
Because when you get 300 emails a day and half of them are worthless, you got to sift through all that. And that's the thing that people don't understand. Now, what I'm coming to the reality of is using technology to help me process my workflow. So I'm still working on that, y'all. But that's why I think we're in this technological age and area. We got to use it to our advantage versus always getting the short end of a stick. All these other companies using technology and out competing with us. If we use that same technology, we can compete with them. If not win.
Yeah.
You know.
Great. So wish you the best, and we'll have to have you back on later this year and talk more about how 2019 is turning out for multifamily.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it. My pleasure.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubin. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.